The HP Outdoors Waterfowl podcast is powered by Cornerstone Gun Dog Academy. CGA is the world's most comprehensive online gun dog training resource. They've got over 160 instructional videos that includes everything you need to take your 7-week-old puppy to a finished gun dog. Visit cornerstonegunDogAcademy.com to sign up for the free preview module and begin your training journey today. Cornerstone Gun Dog Academy, the most advanced gun dog training resource on the web. You are listening to the HP Outdoors Waterfowl podcast. Out in the field, how you've prepared determines how you'll perform. With balanced fat and protein to support peak condition, Eukanuba Premium Performance Dog Food enhances strength, energy, and endurance. So when the pavement ends and the truck doors swing open, you and your dogs are ready for anything. Strong, focused, ready for anything? That's a Eukanuba dog. Since 1898, Old Town has been building the most advanced, quality watercraft products to give you the very best experience on the water. Whether you're hunting, fishing, or enjoying a relaxing paddle on the lake, there's a boat for every type of adventurer. If you haven't seen it, check out their newest offering, the new grab-and-go watercraft designed to function as your boat, blind, and retriever. The easy-to-conceal, 11-foot 9-inch, 56-pound Solo Sportsman is the ideal craft for those in search of a stable, lightweight craft that's easy to paddle and even easier to transport or stash. Designed with the hunter and angler in mind, the Solo Sportsman is equipped with thoughtful shell, tackle, and tool storage, a comfortable and adjustable seat and foot braces, an accessory track, and rod holders. Check it out at oldtowncanoe.com/sportsman. Original design, select grade components, superior sound, and unparalleled service. 737 takes exceptional pride in producing the finest quality, best built premium calls on the market today. They're made right here in America, and they're offered only direct to consumers through their website. Shipping in the U.S. is always free, and international orders are also accepted online. A 20-day money-back guarantee and lifetime warranty accompanies every call purchased. 737 Duck Calls. Lead the flock. Soundgear is offering a 35% discount to the HP Outdoors listeners for their instant fit industrial and shooter products. You can head over to soundgearhearing.com and use the promo code HPO35 to claim your discount today. All right, welcome to episode 174 of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl podcast, where your on-demand audio source for all things waterfowl and waterfowl hunting. If you're new to the show, head over to hpoutdoors.com, check out all of our past episodes, as well as you can check us out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're a Facebook user, head over to our listeners group. Check out all the like-minded hunters in there. And my co-host, Dan Harushka. Dan, what's up, man?
Hey, man. Just living a life, keeping it real, being a teacher.
Just keeping it real. Okay. Well, we've got a couple other dudes with us this week that are going to keep it real as well. We've got friends of the show, Ryan Bassham and Barton Ramsey. Gentlemen, how y'all doing?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good, man. Glad to have you guys back in the program. And, this week we're going to probably talk a lot more about something we kind of touched on last week, and it's just sort of, Corona impact on the waterfowl industry and just the outdoor industry in general. I'm sure we'll get off into some other stuff, but it's kind of like, it's been Corona 24/7, it seems like with everything it's controlling, obviously the schools are closed, all of this kind of stuff. And both of you guys have, business interests that are, undoubtedly being affected by this. So we'll kind of talk a little bit about that, but, we were talking a little before we got started. So for that reason, I'm going to start with Barton. We had a lot of pre-show dog poop discussion going on here. So, yes. We've got a puppy pickup day coming up, which is huge. I mean, that is one of the, highlights of a dog owner's, relationship with his puppy, is that day that he comes to your farm and takes the pup home. So, talk about that experience for these folks that are going to be doing that, with all of this, Corona stuff going on.
Yeah, it's definitely changed quite a bit of that. I've got pups that, if I'm being totally honest, my youngest daughter is actually fairly upset with me because I said out loud, I'm really just ready for these puppies to get out of my life. And she can't believe that I said that. So for about a week now, she's been like, Dad doesn't want the puppies in his life. And she's upset about it. But they're at that age where, everyone thinks that having a puppy is a challenge. Well, we have 8 of them. And that's what we signed up to do. But they're definitely just little little terrorist right now. And so when puppies are born, we send out an email. We let everyone know, hey, your pup's on the ground. Everyone's doing well, and they're going to go home when they're 8 weeks old, the Saturday after they turn 8 weeks. And that is 2 days from right now, this Saturday. And man, it was originally like, hey, everything should be fine. There's no real impact. And then it became, hey, I don't know if everyone's going to be able to travel, and hey, you can't fly.
Right.
And as time has progressed, it has become a bit of a crunch. So we have a client who lives on the East Coast who's not working right now. He's a teacher, so he's off, school's closed, and he wanted to come train a little bit, so he volunteered to come over. He'll be here tomorrow, and he's going to take 2 of the puppies back with him to clients who are out east. And then we have 2 clients who are still going to make the drive over on Saturday, one from Ohio and one from South Alabama, LA, Lower Alabama. And then the other ones we're trying to figure out. I'm going to have to meet a guy, I think, in Louisiana for a dog swap for training. He's from Houston, Texas. One of the puppies is going to Houston, Texas. So I think he's going to take the puppy back with him and meet the client. And then 2 of them are going to Wyoming, and I've got to ship them on an airplane. So that guy was planning to fly in and fly back with his pups, and it's not going to happen. So, man, we're figuring it out. In the morning, sure. I'm going to make videos with all the puppies just to kind of show everyone, here's this one, that one. Everyone's going to kind of make their pick, and we'll be as accommodating as we possibly can, but it's definitely made it a bit of a challenge.
So this really comes down to, I was going to say, we talk about picking a puppy with you all the time. We've talked about it multiple times. You pick the mom and dad and the line, and you go with that. And puppy pickup, as fun as it is, really isn't that important, right? You go with the dog from that litter, and you have confidence in the line.
Yeah, everyone's been super cool about that. I mean, people obviously want to make their pick, and if you've been first pick, that's it's valuable to people. I'm definitely in the pick the litter, snag a pup camp. I'd have a tough time picking. These pups are all super fun. They're exceptional little puppies, but yeah, it's just, I guess people would be bummed out if you were going to be the guy that was supposed to pick out of this whole group of 6 females, and then now you can't because coronavirus. But I don't think anyone will get an unfair shake.
What color puppies do you got?
They're all black. Yeah, they're all black, so there won't be any difference in color there. That definitely does make a difference when it comes to picking if there's a yellow litter and people want like a darker one or a lighter one. But these are all black out of red and mouse, and all fairly similar size. There's 2 boys. One of them is the smallest in the litter, and one of them is the biggest in the litter. So we have my kids named them. We have Littles and Big Red, and so because his collar's red. So anyway, they're not all that different.
Huh. One of the things that I was thinking about when you were talking about that is, while that, as you said, it's pick a litter kind of thing. For a lot of people, the pick out it's such an emotional thing, right? It's like when they make their first connection with that dog. And, I mean, Ryan, you can relate to this, in the line of business that you're talking with, you got people that are emotionally invested into a puppy, or they're emotionally invested into a hunt that they've been planning on for a year or better. Some people have been saving for a long time. And we talked before we started recording about, things having to change and people having to change their plans. What have you seen as far as some of that stuff with some of your clients? Because, think about the emotional things in your life. Your kids are born, you buy a house, you get married. But outside of that, it's probably a lot of like, hobby type stuff. Like, oh, I'm a duck hunter and getting a dog's a big thing for me, or I'm an elk hunter and going on a big game hunt is an important thing for me and something that you'll remember forever. So what have you seen on that front when dealing with clients?
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting. You start to kind of it's kind of an opportunity to look back and you take the little life experiences for granted, sort of a deal. But my family's been in the travel agency industry for 43 years. And so you can imagine how this has wreaked absolute havoc, whether it's a hunting trip or whatever. I mean, I think about Barton too. I mean, over the years, talking with Barton, a lot of times it's, hey, I'm going to the airport to drop off puppies, or, hey, I've got a guy flying in. And so I can only imagine how that's affecting his business. But basically the only thing that, my mom's our lead travel agent. The only thing she's been doing the last month is canceling trips left and right. I've got an acquaintance that got stuck in Argentina. And they finally were able to raise enough money to get a private charter out of the country because they couldn't get a commercial flight out. They landed in Argentina when the government basically was forcing people into 14-day quarantine. And then there was no commercial flights back into the U.S. after that. And so how do you get home? There's been a lot of situations like that. A lot of guys that have several thousands of dollars wrapped up in hunts and airfare, and they can't get them refunded. I mean, it's kind of a mess. I mean, it puts a major strain on a lot of things. But at the same time, I think what's interesting, and talking to a lot of these clients that have had to cancel trips and kind of just reevaluate, the situation going on in their lives right now, is they've been able to kind of level set and be like, you know what, it's time to rally around each other and try and make sure that we're not spreading this thing, whether you believe how bad it is or not. It's real. I had somebody that I work with down in Kentucky. In fact, a lot of people know Hunter Forbes and Jenna K. Forbes. And, Jenna's grandmother passed away from COVID-19 a couple of days ago.
Oh, geez.
So that one kind of hit. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm good friends with him, but I've known him for years. And to actually know somebody that was affected, it makes it more real. And I think about my mom who's, battling lung cancer, and, it makes you stop and think and reevaluate what is important. And sure, it sucks. I've had to cancel the next 4 months of hunting trips, but there's more important things to worry about at the end of the day. Being with family and being healthy is kind of priority number one right now. And I think a lot of people's mindsets have gravitated towards that.
Yeah. And there's a lot that you have to accept when governments shut down the ability to go out of the country, right? But yeah, I think was that John that was stuck out of the country? I think I saw that on social media.
Yeah, yep.
So he was. I just caught a little bit of one of his videos saying, we're finally out of our quarantine, but now we're just stuck here. And then, and I clicked on the GoFundMe. It was a substantial amount of money to get a private charter.
Private charter is not cheap. We've had to do a lot of that in our business, and. Yeah, and talking about a private charter out of one country to another in a time like this, it's not cheap. It's excruciatingly painful on the wallet for sure.
Yeah, so I saw. Well, you said that he finally did get home though.
Yeah, they've made it back. There's been a lot of stuff like that. I mean, even on a wider spread, I've been pretty open in the past about my church affiliation, but everybody knows all the missionaries around the world in white shirts and ties, and they're not proselyting anymore. In fact, they've all been flown home, and that's the first time that's ever happened, which is kind of crazy. But the church was having to private charter 737s to get these young men and women back to their families and try and not spread this thing. So it's kind of wild. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars in private charter flights. It's crazy.
Yeah. So are you seeing a lot of the people that have had their hunts canceled? Are you seeing them rebooking a following year? Or are they looking, more something this fall, or just kind of waiting to see?
Here's what's crazy. So I'm consulting with a lot of hunting brands right now as well. And so I've got two answers to that question, because you can look at this through multiple lenses and how it affects our hunting industry. You've got, consumer product brands. And there's 3 or 4 that I'm working with right now. And we're having to kind of go and look at our business strategy and say, okay, well, crud, what's everybody going to do with the lack of disposable income, and how does that affect their business? And then on the other side, you've got outfitters that have a variety of clients that are saying, oh, well, you know what, I'm going to play it safe and I'm not going to come. I'm going to cancel. I've talked to some outfitters that have gone ahead and just canceled their entire spring hunts. They don't want anybody coming, even if they're driving. I've got outfitters in Africa that are, you know, they're screwed. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are just going to go belly up, and it's not really a question of, well, I'll just rebook next year. I mean, a lot of guys are leaving their deposits in place in hopes that they can maybe still go this year or next year. But the ripple effect that it creates is devastating to the entire economy. But at the end of the day, the hunting industry is very much a, you know, it's not a necessary thing. It's not a necessity.
Right.
And so one of the first things to go when people find themselves in a position where they're unemployed and don't have the income is all the things that you don't need are going to go. And that very much directly impacts the hunting industry. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know. There's so many, I mean, yesterday, you know, I was supposed to go hunt grizzly bear in Alaska next month. Well, Alaska just closed spring bear season. Nebraska is no longer taking non-resident turkey hunters. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think it's just going to get worse, honestly.
Yeah.
I hope I'm wrong.
Everything in Oregon is shut down currently. Hunting and fishing,
right?
Both, I believe.
I hadn't heard that one.
And I know,
crazy. Josh,
you know, Jablonski, who's a good friend of mine, was in my wedding. He's gonna, they instead of buying like a decked system for their truck, they built a bed and everything in the back of my buddy's truck, and they were heading to Nebraska for 10 days to hunt turkeys.
Oh.
And they swung by. They're like, "Hey, can we borrow one of your Yetis?" And I was like, "Sure, man. Yeah, you know, fill it up with turkeys and, you know, just bring it back when you're done." And well, now, you know, he's like, "Well, I guess I'll be bringing that back up to you." And, you know, we can't even get in a state to do it. And I'm just like, oh. And I think they were supposed to leave next week, maybe. You know, sometime early in April.
Well, that's what's so hard about this. It's so fluid. And, you know, I look at it like just, you know, I'm trying to find ways I can get my kids out of the house right now. And, you know, taking my son fishing or something like that is something we can do. But it's like boat ramps are closing left and right. Some places are closed for access, some are not. So it's like, I don't want to get jammed up over doing something that I didn't even know was, you know, closed or whatever. So it's kind of hard to even consider planning things and just, and all that. So that's tough. But, you know, one of the things that I always think about when we go through stuff like this, and, you know, I'm about to turn 37 years old. So like there's been a few things in my life that have changed sort of how things have gone the rest of the way, like 9/11, right? You know, before 9/11, you know, we traveled one way, and since then, you know, it became way of life. And I wonder from this, like, what will be those things that become something that, you know, affects us long term and what just becomes our new normal. Like, and I wanted to ask you, Barton, I think, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just, I have some fatigue with following some of this stuff and like what's truth and what's fact and all that stuff. But I thought I'd heard at some point that like dogs cannot get it, but they can carry the virus on their fur for a period of time. I wanted to have you chime in on that. And, have you had any families express concerns about like taking a puppy home from you and having it quarantined for 14 days because if the virus is on its fur or whatever, you know, or if someone's out training with another dog where he lives in another house and maybe the people are social distancing just fine, but the dogs are messing around and whatever. And, you know, is there anything that you're aware of that could be a concern in that regard?
Yeah. I mean, I think most of our clients are not super concerned about catching coronavirus. I mean, the demographic, there definitely are some, and we have some healthcare professionals, who, again, we got a guy that's trying to get his pup here for training right now, but he's a radiologist in Kansas City. He's actually a radiologist for the Chiefs, and Kansas basically said, look, if you leave the state, then you have to be quarantined for 14 days. So so he can't get us his dog. But people haven't been super concerned about the dogs actually carrying it. It can apparently survive for, you know, however many hours on anything. So I saw a chart that had, you know, cardboard for your Amazon boxes and Bethany, my wife, spend Lysol on those things when they come in, and
Yep.
So yeah, it can live. And I guess like a porous thing, like just being smart like that. Even I wouldn't think about it. The FedEx guy pulls up and hands me boxes, and I'm like, oh yeah, but he's been to lots of houses and all that stuff. So Bethany's had to remind me some of that sort of stuff and the way that she takes precaution. And people do, I think, want to be extra cautious. Dogs actually can get coronavirus, and we had a dog last year get coronavirus at Miles's house in Kentucky, but it's just a different strand of corona. It's not COVID-19.
Yeah.
And so it's a pretty bad upper respiratory infection for dogs. But as far as carrying it, we haven't had a lot of people concerned as far as, how it impacts, you mentioned just in the future, how we do things. We've been very fortunate. I shared with some friends in a group text 2 days ago. I said, I'm very sorry for all that's going on in the world. I'm thankful for the way our life functions, having Cornerstone Gun Dog Academy being an online business that is helpful for people who are stuck at home. That's been good. It's been a regular month for that. And then with Southern Oak Kennels, we've had some dogs not come for training. We've had some dogs not get picked up, and they're being left 2-3 extra months because the guys don't want to travel. So let's just leave them with you so you can train them. We've had a minimal amount of impact compared to, I trained with Corey Wages today. He's, VP at a bank. He has to work a week on and then a week off. But all the things he would normally do in that week off are being crammed into the week on. And then you've got so many people that are just, I actually think this is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I actually think one of the major impacts that you mentioned, 9/11, travel was different. The lines were getting used to, we're very used to TSA now and how you go through it. And it's so different than before when you could just blaze on through there.
Yep.
I think one of the differences we'll see here will be a massive evaluation of what type of work can and should be done from home.
Yep.
You've got so many people working from home. Can you imagine how that cuts down on so much overhead? Even, for instance, the AKC. I'm waiting on paperwork from the AKC right now. It's taken a little bit longer, but they're officing from home, basically. They have a very limited crew going into their North Carolina office. New York office is shut down. And so I'm thinking, man, I wonder, that whole bill for keeping that place open for all those callers and everything. It's a great point, because over history, companies typically don't change because it's convenient. They make changes because they have to, right? And this is one of those situations where they're being forced to, you either work online and you figure it out, or you go under. And I think you're going to see some amazing things, come out of this that, will allow people to have better work-life balance, lower overhead. All of that kind of stuff is definitely going to be hopefully a positive, I think, that comes out of it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it will push some innovation in the workplace and in education, probably.
No doubt.
I think that at the same time, I was talking to a buddy of mine who's a pastor. Bethany has gone and helped lead worship at our church for the online service. And it really was emotionally disturbing for her just to do that and not be with everyone. Right. And so I think that there are some ways that we'll innovate and move on and things will be different. On the flip side of that, there are definitely some things that I think it will make people appreciate much more.
Absolutely.
I think that we'll be like, man, I took that for granted until I was quarantined, and I sure would love to be able to whatever. So
exactly.
Go ahead, Ryan. I was just going to say, well, I know your wife's doing a lot of work too. Ryan, you mentioned before, but I know our church tried to do like a drive-in type deal for worship, and they called the local authorities and they said, it's probably still best that, you stay home and do the live stream. So, just to keep that out of the equation. So, but your wife's doing a lot of work as well, right?
So right now, what my wife is doing at church is they call her the Relief Society president. Basically, she's over the welfare for all the women in the church here in the city of Bozeman, for all the ladies that are members of the church. And so, think about this. There's a lot of single moms out there whose husbands have left them, or they are in whatever financial situation, or individuals who have unfortunately lost their jobs within the last week or two and don't know how they're going to provide for their family. And so it's been interesting to see her have to really put a lot of prayer and thought into how to still help these individuals and not be in direct contact with them how we normally would as a church, and giving service to others. And there's still a lot of good work that can be done in that regard, really. But it's forcing us all as humanity just to kind of look at it a different way. I think you can't underestimate the power that a simple phone call or text message to somebody can really have and brighten their day, because there's a lot of people that are sitting at home by themselves and don't have anybody. They're not fortunate enough to have kids running around the house tearing stuff up, keeping things lively. I'm sure they would love to have that. And so it's been interesting to see how that's blessed our lives through all this unfortunate circumstances. But it's interesting. I'm kind of curious. I don't want to hijack, y'all's questions, but I'm super curious just to see how things have changed and what y'all seen. And for example, I'll give an example. Every time I go to the grocery store over the last couple of weeks, it seems like they've taken one more measure, and it's interesting the things you see. And so right now at our grocery store, you go in and they've got these blue X's everywhere. And I think a lot of different public places like this have done it, but now we've got plexiglass around the cash register lady.
Yep.
Have you guys seen that too?
Yep.
That is, I mean, if you really stop and think, like, people are weirded out to even be too close to you. Like, I grew up, my dad ingrained in my head, like, you when you introduce yourself to somebody, you look them in the eye and shake their hand.
Yeah.
And it's just all these weird little things that we didn't really think about now, that socially it's just, we're totally unplugged. It's bizarre. But both it's a ghost town. It's weird.
Yeah. The personal bubble, that 6 foot guideline now, I feel like I'm playing social distancing bumper cars out there. Cause you're like, you just have that feel for what you believe is reasonable. And you just kind of like float from person to person. And, to your point with the grocery store, around here, I mean, I'd heard of Instacart before this. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but it's like, we haven't gone into a grocery store like at all. We just order it and either someone delivers it to our house, or we just drive up and they like do a drop and step back like it's a bomb or something. And we walk out, we grab it and we load it in, and like, that's how it happens. It's just crazy. It's so weird. And I mean, I just wonder, like, I feel like it'll be a really slow migration back to normalcy, because it's not like tomorrow, if they say, hey, cases are on the decline, things are good, like, we're going to lax the social distancing requirements. You're not going to go out and like dap up somebody, like, it's just going to be weird. Right. I mean, it's going to take some time for that to like go back to normal. So I don't know.
Sure.
So how intense are you guys seeing it around your places, like down in Mississippi, Barton? How, you have a lot of local cases?
Yeah. We don't look so great on the map. That's really any map, though, of the country. When you put Mississippi in there, we really tend to shine.
The cream rises. Rises up.
One of the last to get it.
We're
holding strong there for a bit.
So we were, we're last in everything except, Bethany just reminded me, obesity, teen pregnancy, STDs, those sort of things. We're first there.
Yeah.
Which would still make us last in everything. But, I mean, Bethany sent me was it you that sent me the picture? She sent me a picture of a map today, and a graph, and they were rating counties based on what you're talking about. So how's your county doing when it comes to social distancing? And it had to do with the percentage of people who are still going out of the house, still gathering in groups. My county was a D or an F on everything. So basically a massive amount of people who are still doing everything. Sorry, my wife's pulling duct tape. Still doing everything. I promise it's duct tape. Still doing everything like completely like it's
as normal.
like it's nothing, right? So, and that's definitely been the case around a lot of parts. Like we've had a lot of drama with our governor in Mississippi. That's been on national news. People have been very frustrated. So we have a shelter in place order that starts Friday at like 5 p.m. So we're like the last ones to do this. And
how long is that in place for? Like what's the duration?
April 20th or April 30th. I can't remember.
Wow.
And it probably will end up going further than that.
We're already locked down to June 10th.
Really?
Yeah.
June 10th.
See, we're
yeah,
man. We're just not. Mississippi is like just going to be the. So this is actually, a big part of the issue. I mean, the U.S. does have a relatively low death rate, I guess, from all I can see. Our percentage of deaths,
assuming numbers are accurate.
Assuming testing and numbers are accurate, our death rate, us and Germany, seem to be pretty favorable compared to a lot of places, right? But like when you look at that chart of the exponential growth, a big part of that is the way our country is set up. You really don't have a lot of options to make people stay at home. You're looking at some of these countries where they just squashed it. I'm like, yeah, they put razor wire around apartment complexes and told people you can't leave. Yeah. That's not happening here. So yeah, and for some, that's a massive source of tension for me. Like just from a political standpoint, I'm like, well, I really don't want anyone to be able to tell me this. Right. But at the same time, I want everyone to be safe, and I want people who are idiots to like get in trouble for being idiots and getting people sick. So it's a weird tension. I'm sort of the designated go out guy for our family. Like when we need to get groceries or puppy supplies, we got a friend that has chickens, and I go pick up eggs, but she just leaves them like on the doorstep. And picking up school supplies
you're the
for
tribute.
Kids. Yeah, I volunteer as tribute, and I go out and wear. If you follow on Instagram, I wear those black nitrile gloves all the time. Right? Yeah. Everyone's always like, "Why do you wear those gloves?" And I'm like, "How about my gloves now, dude? I got like a 3-year supply of those jokers, so I'm good on gloves. I don't have masks, but." Anyway, yeah, it's starting here. I went to go get some puppy pads for the little terrorists yesterday, and they had limited hours at Petco, and they had the blue lines where you had to stand behind the blue line before you could come into the store. And then 2 days ago, I went jogging and I ran. It's a 3-mile run from here to the post office and back. So sometimes I'll just go get 3 miles. Stamps. Man, wow. it's a whole new me, brother. So I ran over there. I was winded, I actually made a video I'll send you guys that you'll laugh, where exercising like brings out like you have some clarity, and I had this whole like moment where I made a video talking about how we're not going to go down this trail, but we all needed a moment like in Game of Thrones when we learned why Hodor was called Hodor. Like that was, your whole brain and your heart all. Anyway, I made a video. I could barely talk in the video because I'd been running, and I was just like, but I went to the post office and I felt bad because I saw these blue lines on the floor, and I was the first one there, and I got to the counter, and the poor guy behind me, he didn't know what the blue lines were all about, and he like walked right up behind me. And the postal worker's like, "Get back, sir, get back." Sound like me talking to Red on a blind retrieve. Get back, And the guy looks like all nervous, and he was like, "Blue line," and I was like, "Whoa, man, it's all good. I'm not nervous. I'm not mad at this guy." It was weird. Crazy. So yeah, Mississippi's we're getting there a little bit, slowly but surely. We have a lot of cases. I have a friend who we kept our friend's baby today. My wife's like the baby whisperer, and we kept a friend's baby. She's in healthcare. Her other daughter can't go to, the hospital nursery was still open. I don't know how that works, but it was still open for healthcare providers. And 2 of the workers in the nursery tested positive. So that caused a bit of chaos. And man, there's people getting it left and right in Mississippi now. So
really,
it's increasing like crazy here. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So Barton, what something that you've been running the last few years, and it's just a huge event now had to get rescheduled. So maybe walk us through the summit and just the sad times that was.
Man, it was a tough call. I went into this with the mentality that so many people did. You know, it's just like, oh, we're not canceling anything. In fact, Bethany, who's always right, was like, you should probably consider postponing the summit. And I was like, oh no, ain't no Corona coming here, and blah blah blah. You know. And anyway, the closer it got, the more I was like, dang, this thing's blowing up. And of course, the summit was supposed to be March 21st, so that's like, you know, almost everyone took a normal spring break the second week of March. And then it was like, well, maybe we should take an extra spring break. And so, yeah, we made the decision. I feel like we made it at the right time, or early enough to where it was not reactive. It was like, hey, we're going to be proactive, give people time to change flights over. And it was a tough decision. The blessing is, it has not stopped raining in 2020 at my place. It is a mud pit here. I mean, just incredible. So the whole time we were planning this thing, we're like, how are we going to keep people out of the mud? And so I'm definitely looking forward to having the summit when it's a little bit less muddy at my place. But it was hard. I was really looking forward to seeing, you know, a couple hundred of my closest friends and having fun and having some dog events, and hard on our partners, you know, and they'd already made big plans. Everybody had sent stuff for our big Delta waterfowl raffle. So you think about like Delta waterfowl, how many, or ducks, how many of them have had to cancel banquets or, you know, those are not happening. So where's the money coming from, you know, for conservation? That's a large chunk of what they do. And I've got like a whole room full of raffle items just sitting here until we actually fire this thing up and do it. And grand scheme of things, canceling a big, you know, gathering for dog lovers that are our friends is not a huge deal, but it is a little bit of a picture of what's happened for everybody. And like Ryan said in the very beginning, you know, what joins us together is a hobby and a passion. And those are the first things to go when push comes to shove, you know. Right. And when it comes to paying your mortgage or buying more decoys, you know. Yeah. All those companies, I really feel for a lot of the folks in the industry right now who, at first it was a fear of, and Ryan will understand this a lot better than I can we get stuff from China or from Asia, or what's the supply chain? Right. To go from that to changing your forecast based on supply to, hey, we can't even open our stores and we're not selling anything. That's pretty tough for sure.
Well, I'm afraid a lot of those brands are gonna. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong, but you know, who has to get laid off first? You know. Yeah. And how does that affect their family? That's a very difficult decision, and a lot of industries are having to make those decisions. So,
and I think another thing I think a lot of people kind of take for granted, right, is you know, they see people that work for these companies, and we've run into this a lot in the waterfowl space, and people get the impression that these companies are these big, gigantic machines that just print money and like hunt all over the place and do all these things. And you're seeing, right? And you're seeing across the landscape of industry in this country, like, you know, this has been going on for, let's just call it a month, you know, in general, where it's been like really a concern. And it's escalated in certain parts of the country faster, but like you're seeing companies literally like closing the doors or laying off just significant numbers. And like, that should give everybody an idea of like, you know, most people in this country live paycheck to paycheck, and a lot of businesses are no different. Like their business models are set up to, they're counting on that revenue to come in to be able to keep the machine moving forward. It's not like they're making a bunch of revenue, putting 70% of it away for a rainy day and operating on 30%. It's way thinner margins than that. And, you know, this is going to have a detrimental impact on a lot of companies. You're definitely going to see a lot of companies close the doors, just because I saw a statistic on social media, movie theaters I think, like in the last week, they brought in like across, like in totality, like $5,000 or something like that. It was absurd, where it's like hundreds of millions year over year. It was like 100% loss year over year this time last year. Cause you get like, spring break and you get like big movies coming out and stuff. So it's like, that's just a huge, and waterfowl companies aren't typically on that type of level. But like, just put any company out there where it's like, hey, 100% of your revenue year over year is going to be down. There's not going to be a lot that are going to be able to survive that.
No. And I think that the scariest thing of it all is everything you just said transpired in a matter of 14 to 21 days.
Oh, that's
it.
That's it.
Our world was turned upside down like that.
Yeah.
It's just
absolutely bizarre.
Unreal.
Yeah. That part is definitely scary. And I don't think and maybe it was just being a little bit naive, but I didn't really realize just how many businesses across so many industries operated on such small margins and quick turnaround. I've got several friends who own restaurants, and man, just the way that dropped. Anywhere that caters to people, gathering and I told you I went to the pet shop, and there's like 8 or 9 retail stores in the parking lot of the pet store, and there's like maybe 3 cars in the whole parking lot. And I'm like, man, there's people that are employed by every one of those stores and all those restaurants. What are they doing?
Yep.
It's that's pretty crazy. And those people, within those people, are the folks who are buying waterfowl gear or booking hunts or whatever it is. It's a massive impact. But then you start talking about bailout, and what does that look like? I was with Corey all day today, and he works at a bank, and people are calling like, hey, I need help, and the government's saying, hey, well, we're gonna give you guys these grants, and it's got to be done by Friday, and then they're don't really say much else. They're like, everybody's gonna have their debt forgiven if they meet the criteria. What's the criteria? We don't know, and that's a pretty bizarre thing as well. Everybody wants. I understand people wanting a check, businesses wanting help, and I've had 8 or 9 people send me links to how to get a small business loan during this time from the federal government and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And but at the end of the day, someone has to pay for all that, and it's going to be really interesting impact on our country and the overall economy for sure.
Yep. One thing that I think is interesting we haven't really touched on, we've talked a lot about like immediate impact and what's happening right now, and a little bit about how it will change our lives and our daily lives. But I've been thinking a lot about this fall, like how's it going to change waterfowl season potentially? Like, am I going to be able to drive up to Canada and hunt, or am I going to be able to jump on a plane and go hunt in Arkansas like I typically would? I mean, what's going to change there? And then on top of that, I mean, you start thinking about the products that people would normally buy. I mean, Barton, to your point, I don't plan on buying anything new. I mean, ammo is about the one thing that I know I'm going to need to keep buying.
Yep.
But I can buy with what I got. It's just, it's going to be an interesting season. And it's yet to be seen, obviously, how much impact it's all going to have. But hopefully by then everything's normal. You can only hope for the best.
Man, we're already talking about dogs over in the UK. We bring all of our dogs over, and I think I told you the other day, Ryan, they won't have a field trial season in the UK. If they do, it'll be extremely limited because they can't get birds. The birds come from Spain and France. Borders are closed, so none of the shoots will be operating. Even if quarantine's gone, there won't be any birds for shoots. So field trial's gone. So what's that going to do as far as making up new field trial winners? Dog availability? Are more dogs going to be available? The conversion rate was great the other day. We were like, how can we send people money in the UK? Just take some money and hold on to it for when we need to buy something, because the conversion rate has never been this low. But of course, it went right back up 2 days later, and it'll be interesting to see how far it goes. And that's what's scary to me is, we had a litter of puppies born 2 nights ago at Brad's house. How are they going to go home? is it going to be better in 8 weeks? Is it going to be the same, or is it going to be way worse?
Sure.
What we do, and who knows how it'll impact this fall? And I mean, look, I know kids are running around everywhere, but we've got 3 kids here at the house, and Bethany's homeschooling, and our private school is sending out the re-enrollment forms. Like, hey, by the way, we've extended the deadline, but these are still due.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are we going to school in August?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
We've had those conversations.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to pay you guys to have Zoom meetings and pick up packets, It's bizarre.
Well, Ryan, to your point, what I'm keep thinking about this fall is like, obviously having a vaccine for this would be pretty important, but like, depending on where that's at and people's confidence, like, we talk about traveling with TSA, is getting your temperature taken going to become a thing at the airport? And
I think it will be.
If you've got a temperature, are they going to turn you away at the airport when you've spent all this money and taken off work and all this stuff to go on a 10-day trip to Disney with your family, or a 5-day hunt in Arkansas, or whatever you're doing?
Right.
I mean, people are going to be pretty upset about that kind of thing. And I'm just wondering,
that's going to become a reality. I think. I think it's going to be, international travel is going to become the most difficult it's ever been, and I think even in-country travel it'll become our new normal. I think Barton said that, or it will become our new normal, but it's going to suck, and it's going to be a lot of changes for sure. Yeah. My mom's been in the travel agency industry for 43 years, and she's seen a lot of changes, and she says this is going to be way worse than 9/11 and how it impacts the way people travel.
Wow.
And so that's a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah.
That's bizarre. Look, we have some friends that are very close to us who were working in China when all this started. And they happened to take a weekend trip to, I can't remember where they went, somewhere close by, and it all like blew up while they were on their weekend trip, so they couldn't go home, they couldn't go back, or they'd be stuck. So they had nothing, like they didn't have any of their stuff, and so they left. Maybe they're in Taiwan, or no, they're in Cambodia, and they left Cambodia and went somewhere else nearby, realized that they did not want to stay there at all, and ended up having to fly home. They had to do some sort of test screening before they got on their flight, and they let them on the flight, and then they checked while they were on the plane, they rechecked their passport and saw that it had been stamped when they left China, and pulled them from the plane. And they're posting all this on Facebook while it's going on, and took Cameron and Jessica, their names, took Cameron and Jessica and put them on a different plane of sick people. Like people who had fevers were put on a different plane. And so Cameron, you got to know him. He's like really chill, but also like really emotional. And he's like, just take me now. Like, this plane's got to crash, Jessica's boohoo. Anyway, they ended up being quarantined somewhere else before they could. It was crazy. They wound up having a GoFundMe to get home, like the first guy we talked about, after multiple levels of quarantine, coming from China, and got home with the clothes they were wearing in their wallets.
Jeez.
Computers, guitars, everything is sitting in an apartment complex in China, and they can't go back. And that was like that was their life. They lived there. They taught it at a school there. So,
jeez. See, I'm usually a very positive guy, and the thing that worries me, Josh, you mentioned vaccines, and if you're talking about 18 months to get a good vaccine, and everyone right now is in quarantine and you don't have it, and then we go back to living a semi-normal life in, say, 4 months, like, it's still going to be here, right? You're not going to have a vaccine, and it's just going to – so my positive vibe is kind of dampered down by the thought of eventually it's almost like we all need to host it at one time or another, but I don't know how good of an idea that is, because some of the things I'm reading just does not sound good. Even if even our age, and God forbid that our parents or anyone get it, but it's just crazy, man. It is a crazy time, and like you said, I'm at home with the kids and getting all the school work, and my wife's at the hospital, so she Lysol's down and changes and does all that before she gets in the van to come home, and she's a nervous wreck because she works in TCU unit where it's all older people, and if she brings that in there, then potentially that's on her, and it's just. I think one thing that isn't talked about, it's starting to be talked about, but just the mental health of people and being by themselves and not the normal day to day. And I could just see some bad things happen.
That's a serious subject. We've got a friend named Rory Tyre.
Just tough.
Sorry.
Real tough.
Sorry, I had a break there. My bad. You guys had to pause. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
There we go. Yeah. There was like a delay. I was like, what's going on? No, the mental stuff, Bethany's doing a master's degree in counseling right now, and there were a lot of conversations that we had. And I've got a friend who's a life coach who's doing a lot of stuff on Facebook right now to basically help people process like the grief they feel from how this has impacted them, even if it's little things like not being able to just be. Sure. I mean, we're social creatures, like this is fun. This is the most interaction I've had with a group of people in a while, right? But there are some things. So one of the things that was heartbreaking for me was Bethany and I were having a conversation, and she had talked to a friend of hers who's a counselor in Memphis, and she just said, for a lot of kids out there, school is a safe place, and home is not.
Yep.
And going to school every day, it means getting fed and not dealing with, mama's boyfriend or whoever it is. And then there are a lot of people who just, you see the jokes about it, there's a lot of dog training jokes about it. Like, hey, you thought dog training was tough. Look how hard it is to just get human beings to sit and stay, but it really is. I think from a mental health standpoint, you can't go anywhere. And I mean, I think that's going to be a big issue for people being at home.
Good point.
People are afraid of change. People have anxiety about what's happening. I don't know how you guys feel, but like, I appreciate your optimism all the time, Dan. You're usually like super positive guy. I'm probably the middle of the road there, but like when I read the news about all this stuff, it's very hard to decipher. Like half the time I'm like, oh, cool, it's going away. Like it's not going to be a big deal. And then I read something else and I'm like, this is the end of the world. That's it. We're done.
Yep.
And it seems like it's every other article is one or the other. And I don't think both of them can be right. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle, but man, you can get pretty anxious reading the news and thinking about this stuff.
Sure. Well, and I think the thing too is like, you're talking about an adversary or whatever we want to call it that you can't see, you can't smell, you can't touch, it's like, you don't know. And, to hear people talking about how they walk around infected and spreading it to people unknowing with no symptoms, that's terrifying, right? I mean, imagine, like if the mortality rate was higher than it is. I mean, it would be, it's like the quickest way I could think of to bring, this nation down is because, people, the anxiety portion of it, they get so wrapped around the axle about trying to do everything right to protect their family. Like, it's not uncommon for kids to have like asthma and things like that. Like those families are probably going out of their minds because something that they think is completely manageable now is something that they are fearing that could be a life-threatening situation for their kids if they get exposed to this. So it's like, it's hard to put yourself in that position, unless you're living it. But it's crazy. It's been just such just a jarring thing. That's all I can describe it as, just a jarring feeling of like, wow. I just feel like it's like a sucker punch, right? You just don't see it coming, and all of a sudden you're on the ground. You're like, whoa, how'd I get here? Like that happened quick.
I think it's
so. I was going to say, Ryan, you've been in the business a long time, companies, here and there, and what do you see in the long term? You kind of know what some margins are for some companies. Do you see like a juggernaut coming out of this? Just one company, kind of taking over, or do you see doors closing and new people popping up? What do you think?
It's a great question. Somebody asked me that yesterday, or something similar to it. I'm a believer when one door closes, another one opens. For some of these businesses, their doors are going to close. Hopefully not, but if they've been smart about the way they've been running their business, they're probably going to be okay. They'll survive. The ones that don't, it's going to change the landscape, and there's other people that are poised to come in and fill that slot and evolve. And I think that the businesses that will thrive and be able to really survive this are going to look around and say, okay, how do we position ourselves as a brand in such a way that we aren't trying to just jam a sale down somebody's throat, despite the world, feeling like it's crumbling around us? How do we sympathize with and really truly care and be a part of the community, and make decisions that benefit people, and not just, our bottom line? I think it's going to be a change of mindset. It's going to be, looking around and saying, okay, well, if we can't interact with people the way we normally would in our business, what is at our disposal? And, I agree with Barton. Like, this is the most human contact I've had outside of my family in like 2 weeks. I'm gonna have to start doing major like FaceTime group messages or something. But but businesses are going to have to get pretty. They're going to have to think outside the box. Like, we can still connect with each other. Is my point. We're connecting right now. So what does that look like for a business to still be able to have meaningful relationships with their end consumer from a digital platform? I think technology, that will force technology to continue to evolve so that some of these businesses can still have an impact. For some businesses, depending on the product type, it'll be easier than others, but so many unknowns. It's this whole thing. And I think to sum it all up is fear of the unknown. We just don't know.
Let me ask you a question about that, because I'll use a personal experience here. My wife had a GMC Acadia that we got in 2010, and that was kind of like on the backside of the GM bailout or whatever. Sure. And that vehicle had like so many recalls and like all this kind of stuff that was covered under warranty. And I was just like, man, was it because at the time they were trying to go lean? Were they cutting corners? Were they swapping out different products for, components to just, well, this one's a couple pennies cheaper, so let me use that one instead. And, you don't know the ripple effect of that until it's out in the getting used and you experience it. Mm-hmm. So I'm worried as a consumer that companies are going to go down that route and say, well, this piece saves me like 2 cents a unit, so I'm going to swap to that. And then you're going to start, getting, so like, I personally would be really concerned about companies going into this, that if I had questions about the quality of their workmanship, I'm going to have serious concerns about on the backside of this, and companies even that were, what I would consider the pinnacle of, quality, and standards and customer service and all that kind of stuff. It'll be very telling about a company and what they're truly made of as to what we see coming out of this and what their approach to it is.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think they're going to get put up against the ropes, and I think it's just inevitable that some questionable decisions will be made, and in an effort to try and stay in business. And it'll be very telling in the long run, kind of how different businesses have handled this. But I don't know, it's crazy.
Let me ask one more question before you guys. Do you think that we'll see outdoor shows in the near future on any magnitude of what we've seen? I mean, to me, I think a lot of, so this is probably a multi question here, because like some would argue that the validity and how valuable shows has been dwindling, right?
Sure.
So the question is, does something like that still exist? What can they charge someone to put a booth in there? And is attendance going to drop? Like all of that stuff is just really going to be in the crosshairs now if I'm in a business and I'm making decisions. Like, how do you decide where your dollars go? That's crazy. It's just,
Totally. I think, it's going to be very interesting. I got an email today from the Dallas Safari Club because as a business, I participate in that show, and it's one of our most important shows. And it's people from literally all over the world there. I think there's the attendance usually like 80, 90,000 people.
Yeah.
And that may be undershooting that, but it's going to change all of those types of things just because for fear of safety and, now add the layer of the economic impact on this as well. Like there's a lot of brands won't be able to afford to go anymore.
Yep.
For a little bit. It's going to cripple them. They're going to have to make some decisions where they're going to have to get super scrappy, and that's a luxury they can't afford to go and be a part of. And so I think that it will. And the ripple effect that has is we will see some of these shows disappear potentially too, that aren't really well established and haven't been able to set themselves up in the right financial ways to kind of weather this type of storm. The world around us is going to change. It's just a question of what it looks like.
I think that a lot of brands will have to figure out more direct to consumer approach, more being able to. I was thinking about that just with talking to some friends at Gunner Kennel, and just like, man, I'm sure you're pretty pumped about that decision, even though it's nothing
wholesale
to do with any of this. But golly, man, just not having to depend on any retailer to have her doors open for you to, sell your product. And then like with Cornerstone, we were ahead of the curve in doing what we did with Cornerstone by making it all, an all online platform and then being the first ones to really come out with an app, having it on, mobile integrated in an app form. I mean, I've had 4 or 5 different people reach out and just say, hey, like I'm out of work. People from US, UK, like, hey, I'm good at this and I'm trying to like make money and I'd like to like put it out there on a platform. And I think a lot of companies are going to be trying to figure out, and you already look, the outdoor industry is usually, a couple years behind just about everyone else and the trends, but you already look at so many, brilliant companies out there, for instance, ESPN, Netflix, pushing these drops to happen when they know everyone is at home, streaming the Michael Jordan thing this coming Sunday night, the last push or whatever it's called. Last Dance. Yeah. So those companies that are that's not taking advantage of what's happening. That's just being smart and saying, hey, we have to adapt and do it this way. I think that'll separate, and some companies just can't do that. The margins aren't there, or the product doesn't lend itself to that,
I feel like the adoption of digital technology as a brand and then the evolution of that technology and being quick to adapt to it and leverage it to your success as a brand is going to be more critical than ever right now. Like
100%.
Got to be able to use digital technology to your advantage in a world where we don't even shake hands now. So
yeah, think about podcasting. Podcasting has been a massively growing, important part of our society, right? But when this all hit, like the number one most valuable resource to me when all this started was the Joe Rogan podcast he did with the what's his name guy. It's just that was the one thing that like changed my opinion on all of it. That was like, well, I have access to this. And anything where you can take advantage of technology to get in front of your clients, to be a source of whether it's inspiration or education, whatever it is you're trying to do, or just entertainment, being able to leverage some of those things to keep your clients interactive with your company is super important. So we'll see what happens.
Trying to keep some kind of stability in their lives.
Right.
No doubt. No doubt about it.
What else you got, Dan? we've covered a fair bit of ground here, and I hate keeping these guys much longer. I know they got families and stuff that are probably.
I probably have a massive amount of puppy poop to go.
Barton's got puppy poop.
We started there before we pushed record button, but we can end there too. I mean, poop. It's everywhere.
All your luggage just full.
You got poop terrace running around, just wreaking havoc.
Poop terrace. I will say this. We in the past have had a just absolutely awful experience with canine parvovirus, which is just absolutely it's awful. But there is a similarity. There's a funny meme going around with dog trainers when someone says COVID-19, it's like Rambo with a machine gun, and then it's like dog trainers when someone says parvovirus and the dude's in like a hazmat with like bleach guns and everything. The similarity is when dogs get parvo, puppies in particular, it's like a 7 to 10 day incubation period. Mm-hmm. So a puppy, and we know, sadly, we know how to recognize it really quickly. So the last time that happened, we got the pup. One pup got sick. We could tell immediately, loss of appetite, pulled the pup, tested positive for parvo. You had 10 other puppies in there, and you won't know whether or not they have it for 7 to 10 days. And there's nothing you can do. There's nothing but wait. And man, it's like when all this went down there, like 14-day incubation, I was like, dang, like you're a walking time bomb. Like people don't know. And if you're contagious during that part, then it is impossible to stop it. Trust me, impossible to stop it. So anyway, we learned a lot about precaution from dog poop. Maybe we can do the same with our sneezes and coughs and droplets.
Right.
Yeah.
I've never been so self-conscious about springtime allergies and, walking around and just, my eyes might be watering a little bit. And my wife's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Well, I was, trimming the apple trees today and it's just all in my eyes and nose." And she's like, "Are you going to take your temperature?" I'm like, "No, I'm not taking my temperature." Like, come on. But so then I took my temperature.
Apple trees. Who are you, Johnny Appleseed? You up there?
Dude, you know what?
Dan Green Thumb over there.
Those shoots get so
on the homestead.
Big. Hey, man, those apples. We make apple pies every fall, and you can tell if you don't take care of them, then you get these apples that are like big and they taste like water. There's no taste whatsoever. So I try and
I learned a lot about that just now.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah.
I'm happy to know that.
And with that, I think our time is done.
I think that's last call,
really bad cold the other day, and every time I'd blow my nose or sneeze, I'd look over and Bethany's just kind of looking at me, and I was like, I don't have corona.
No sneeze goes unnoticed these days.
Yeah,
not one.
Oh, did you see there was you guys know Wade James, the photographer, videographer?
Yeah. I know the name.
So Johnstown, PA, right where he lives. And I texted him the link, but some dude sneezed at a gas station when he was pumping gas, and someone else yelled at him and said, "Hey, cover your mouth when you're sneezing." Well, he ended up pulling a gun out, and the guy got in his car and he shot his car. Jesus. I was like, "Dude, I said, this is right by you?" And he's like, "Yeah, right down the road from my house." I'm like, I guess you better cover your mouth when you're sneezing.
Yeah,
people are losing their minds out there.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't get worse. That's crazy.
Well, it was good talking to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Guys.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you guys spending some time with us here this evening, and you guys, your insight and your experience in the industry is appreciated. So thanks for stopping by. Hopefully, you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully we get through this soon and on to bigger and better things. So appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all again soon.
Take care.
See you guys.
That's going to do it for this episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. If you're new to the show, head over to iTunes, check out some of our past episodes, and while you're there, leave us a 5-star rating and review. It's the best way for like-minded hunters just like you to find our show. Check us out on social media. Check us out over at hpoutdoors.com and anywhere you can find quality podcast content. That's going to do it for this week. Till next time, for Dan, I'm Josh. Take care.